so I am running for the 22nd Congressional District. I'm running against Devin Nunes, so I'm running for Nunes's seat. And I am one of the people who does not think the Democratic Party is reformable. So I know Peter said that he thinks that we need to save the party. I humbly disagree, Peter. I don't think the party is worth saving, to be honest. So I was a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat for, since I was registered to vote at 18. So I'm now 29, so 11 years, and I just left the party. I've decided, you know what, if that's what being a Democrat means, if it means that we're going to vote for the same things that Republicans vote for and pretend that we're for the opposite, well, then I have more respect for the Republicans in that sense, because at least they tell us they're going to fuck us over. Excuse me, I don't know if I can curse, but at least they tell us that they're going to screw us over. They're pretty upfront about it. And so as far as my platform goes, I'm pretty much the most progressive candidate in my race. There are 6 candidates, including Nunes altogether, and I am further left than all of them. So I'm the only candidate that's calling for universal health care, not just, paying lip service to it, but is going to the rallies, is going to the meetings, is going to, figure out knocking on doors, calling, passing out signs. I'm the only candidate that's actually for it in that sense. Also, we are for universal education, public education, for at least bachelor degrees, and we're also calling for a $22 an hour minimum wage. I know the CFAR calls for 15. We believe in 22 because 22 is actually what it should be with cost of living adjustments. And so I've been studying a lot of MMT because the question becomes, how are you going to pay for it, of course? And so I've been looking a lot into, modern monetary theory. How are we going to pay for it? Well, it turns out we can pay for anything we want. And so we've been studying a lot of that sort of information and getting a lot of good stuff from, Stephen Grumbine. I call him Grumby. He's probably going to hate me for saying that, but I call him Grumby. And then, of course, Dr. Joseph Firestone's doing a great job of elaborating on this. And then we have other candidates running all throughout the country who are doing a great job of learning about MMT and making sure the rest of us understand it. Like Johnny Axum in Minnesota is a great example. Minnesota won. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Cool.
Well, since you brought that up, we'll have to address something. So we had a little shakeup with CFAR, and basically it's just that every item on CFAR each item is supported by majority of Americans, and
right.
So MMT is not even known or understood. So it couldn't really be put on the contract, and there were some issues
right.
about promoting it, because to most people it's just what is that, and so we kind of I think Brian got into some discussions in chat on Facebook, I think, about it, just how Bernie had Stephanie Kelton as an economic advisor, but Bernie kind of had the sense to talk about things in a way that was very broad. A populist would appeal to everyone and not, you just say certain words, even the word progressive now, I think, you probably understand if you have Republican family, and I know my husband, we have some in our family. So, you say certain words, that's it. They're not even listening anymore, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
They're trying to water down the word progressive now, though.
Yes.
Progressive now doesn't hold a lot to, if Kamala Harris is progressive, if Nancy Pelosi is progressive.
Yeah.
I mean, Doug Jones is probably going to be progressive.
Kamala, just so you know. I got told by the neolib, the Young Democratic Party, when I said her name like that. It's actually Kamala, thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry you forgot to include Democratic Rising Star before her name.
Oh my God. I love...
It's also a penalty.
Okay, so I think we weren't online when you introduced yourself, so... will you say again, do you go by the Silly Rabbit on Twitter or at?
I'm Peter Douche, but it's at SILE Rabbit, Silly Rabbit.
Right, and you were Pat the Burner during.
I just added you today, John.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Like minutes ago.
Yes, okay, I followed you back.
But I saw you were retweeting the right people, so you got my support.
Yay! Must have been Seema. Probably Seema Hernandez in Texas.
Definitely Seema, Nina Turner. Gotta love Nina Turner.
I love Seema.
Oh, yeah. Nina's awesome.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, Seema's awesome, and she's a CFAR candidate. And, you know, we were, of course, disappointed that she didn't win, and it's Beto. But she did. Yeah, she did. She really did. Yeah.
She did really good for spending, what, less than $10,000 and getting 250,000 votes, wasn't it? Something like that. Pretty good. Pretty good return on investment there.
I think so. Yeah.
Did any of you guys happen to see, I believe it was in Progressive Army, an article, help me out here, Brian, Miami, he goes by Miami Jeff, wrote it. Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I know Miami Jeff.
Okay, so he wrote an article about SEMA meeting with Beto and how that went. You know, that wasn't...
Did not go well at all.
No, but...
It didn't. She's pretty upfront. She's pretty blunt about how she talks about
things. It doesn't help that Beto is kind of a jackass.
Yeah, I've heard.
So you can say anything on here. But, yeah, I thought, well, one thing that bothered me, though, I think she was saying, you know, you don't understand. Go out into my community and find out what it's like for people, you know? And I thought, don't give him any pointers. Like, don't tell him what to say so he can then sound like he's for these people and he's not really, you know? But, yeah, I mean, so, I don't know. That's kind of what we're trying to do.
I was encouraged to see that she's running in 2020. When she had lost, I told her, hey, Cornyn's up in 2020. You should run again. And I'm glad to see. I'm sure other people were telling her that, too. But hopefully this next time around, she'll get the support that she obviously deserves, and it should be a more interesting contest, I think.
Yeah, well, again, I think that's really good she is, because for her to do as well as she did this early, you know, I think that's
a very good sign.
Bodes well, yeah. So, Pat the Burner, you tweeted in during the primaries, again, just kept, I think, all of us amused as we were, like, pulling our hair out of what was happening. But there was an kind of ongoing thing with where Twitter, like, what did they do? They banned you, or what all happened there?
Well, so I was in the middle of an argument with Sally Albright. It's been a while.
Oh.
On Twitter, and then I suddenly was locked out of my account, and you know, they didn't notify me. They didn't follow any of their own protocols. And then I had to appeal it, and I appealed, and they said, well, you've been declared guilty of impersonation, and your account will not be reinstituted.
Oh my gosh. So,
you know, to not give a warning, I had almost 20,000 followers.
Oh.
And to go from that to 0 for impersonation when I followed the rules was kind of ridiculous. And I was lucky that I happened to have this other account, because I had the Peter Douche account was the one they canceled. Pat the Burner mostly posted political cartoons and added a little snark on top of them.
Beautiful snark.
That kind of stuff. So I was able to basically migrate the people over, and I didn't lose, you know, both counts were equally, you know, kind of the same size, about 20,000.
And now
he kicked me out, and I complied with all the rules, and I'm gone. So that's...
Now who were they...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, no, go ahead, Brian.
I was just asking, who did they say you were impersonating?
Yeah.
Peter Dow, of course, but you know, I followed all the rules. The rules say you just have to have parody in your name. You can't try to, you know, get money from people or form some pyramid scheme, or I don't know. I don't know what impersonation is if you allow parodies and I say I'm a parody.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous, because, okay, so if we follow their logic, what basically happened was people who were trying to follow Peter Dow were instead following you. I mean, that's the leap of logic they're trying to make. That's ridiculous.
It's a pretty big stretch. And I even took my, you know, I was using his picture, but I cartooned it up. I added donuts and things that made it look silly. Said I was a parody. So
wait, what is the donut thing on Twitter? Do you?
Yeah, the donut story. Nina Turner was trying to deliver a petition.
Oh, okay.
On behalf of people, and they locked her out of I don't know if it was the DNC headquarters, but they locked her out, wouldn't allow her to deliver the petition.
Right.
So her and all the followers that were out there, they brought them donuts instead. And then Nina, being Nina, said, something to the effect of don't placate me with your donuts. And then immediately articles are written about how ungrateful Nina is, So the chocolate donut emoji came to symbolize how Nina is, well, it represented Nina, but it represented the bigger propaganda center people saying Nina's ungrateful. But to use a chocolate donut to mock a black progressive leader after all the false claims of racism and from the center, it's just beyond hypocrisy. But that's what the chocolate donut is.
Okay.
Well, that's what the Democrats are good at, though. I mean, I'm the first, I don't like identity politics, but I'm the first openly gay black candidate to run in California, the second in the country ever. And you know that the Democrats haven't supported me this whole time. You know that they don't support me. That's why I left. But you better believe that as soon as the top two is finished, if I'm not in the top two, they're going to trot my happy black ass out to every black neighborhood they can figure out and go make me go to every gay club and every gay neighborhood they can find to make sure that I go get people to vote for their little show. You know that's what they're going to do. That's what they're good at. That's all they're good for.
Yeah. So. Well, you sound sexist and racist. So I get it. I completely get it.
Oh my God.
The hit pieces are coming. I mean,
it's all coming out of the wash, right?
Oh, speaking of the hit pieces, we had, as I was saying, Teddy from Guion Journal joined us on Saturday night when we were talking, and he wrote an article today or yesterday. Oh gosh, no, I can't find it. About something about the first black woman president. It was. Anybody else see this yet?
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh man, I had it up here and I can't find it. Anyway, he writes some pretty scathing things too about identity politics, basically, and so
Right. Well, there are actually people in the center that think Hillary would have been our first black female president.
Oh yes, right.
Like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
I'm sure you guys all saw the videotape of that radio interview where she said they ask her what she carries with her, and she says hot sauce.
Hot sauce.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. Well, so you have you're back up to like 26,000 followers, I think it is. Yeah. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah. Bringing us sarcastic wit daily. I love the little, is it Democratic Rising Star TM? I
try to add that to most of the candidates. And for the most part, that started with, you can't see Kamala, I don't care.
Yeah.
You will never see her name without Democratic Rising Star before it in every article.
Right.
Say that. Yep.
Right.
And how are you a Democratic Rising Star when you've accomplished next to nothing and progressives don't like it?
Because of the color of her skin and the thing between her legs. Hello.
That is not a fair characterization, though, because she has done something. She sided with Jeff Sessions for wanting civil asset forfeiture. So that's something.
She refused to prosecute executives.
Hey, yeah, the new prison labor is way more progressive than the old prison labor. Also lobbied for keeping the prison labor and refused to prosecute Steve Mnuchin for collusion, even though her own staff recommended it, and she's never answered to why she did it.
Never will. She never will answer to why. She's not a true progressive. She's got to put on the code of being one. She's not a true progressive who actually cares. If she were and she wanted to win in 2020, which we know she's going to run, if she wanted to win in 2020, she would have prosecuted him. She would have been smart. But the Democrats can never see, in front of their nose, so to speak. She would have read the tea leaves and realized the energy was on our side of the movement. And hey, you know what? I probably should prosecute him. It's been that way for a few cycles now that the energy's been on our side, so to speak. So it all it takes is holding your ear to the ground to be able to understand that, I think. And Democrats they're not worried about that.
No.
No, it takes turning off the cable news, for starters, right?
Sure.
And I do think it's interesting that it seems like just honestly kind of recently that more and more people are starting to talk more openly really about how, Tim Canova is now running as an independent, and he was talking openly about the ballot destruction. Ed Schultz, did you read that about Ed Schultz saying that MSNBC fired him because he supported Bernie? I mean, it's sort of, I remember when, right after the election, I would tell Democratic friends of mine, look, things were not on the level with that primary. You do realize that, right? Like, but whether it's voter suppression, outright election fraud, and the media in cahoots with the Democratic establishment, I would try to point that out, and I was just like, oh, you're crazy. That's not possible. But now it's like all these things are coming out, and people are getting more vocal about it. And I guess because we have other places to go to talk about it too, and get the word out, right? So. Well,
the same thing happened to Cenk too. I mean, say what you want about the Young Turks, but Cenk Uygur, before the last couple years, they were pretty far to the left, and he said the same thing happened to him in 2010 it was when he was on MSNBC for a little bit. And I liked his show. I liked watching him. That's how I got turned on to the Young Turks.
He was good. He was like the only one. He was one of the few worth watching on MSNBC. You're right.
Yes, absolutely. They did the same thing to him. They sidelined him because he wouldn't stop talking about Obama and what Obama was doing wrong and how Obama wasn't going far enough.
Right.
And they did the same thing to him. So.
Did anybody watch the little documentary about him? I think it's called Mad as Hell. Yeah, when I discovered the Young Turks, I guess I
did see that. That came out a while ago.
Yeah. So I watched it because I only discovered the Young Turks, during the primary. I didn't know before that, and thought they did a great job. And it popped up on my Netflix or somewhere, so I watched it. And that part about where he leaves MSNBC, it's not quite clear if he really did it. Like he left, so he went to New York and left the TYT crew back in California, and they were kind of like, if you watch the documentary, you can see they're kind of not happy about, well, like, what's going to happen here? Is he leaving or is he going to come back? And then it's just kind of ambiguous. Like, did he really leave and turn down the money? Or was it, because they sidelined him into this like early Saturday morning show where he wasn't going to get a lot of views. So to me, it's kind of unclear. Did he do this noble thing and give up all this money? Or I don't know. But I think, their coverage, the way what happened, I mean, just a complete 180 at DNC week. I couldn't believe it. It was all of a sudden, it's just all stupid Trump stories all the time. No coverage of, Jill Stein or any of that other news. It just became nonstop stupid Trump shit all the time, and I just turned it off. So to me, it's down to Jimmy Dore. And I also think, Jordan Sheridan, they did a great job. He's an excellent reporter. There's been whatever other stuff when he was fired. I'll not go there, but I still think he's a great reporter, and they've got some good people there. But the main show, I can't watch it. It's just, I don't know. What do you guys think? Any thoughts on that?
I'm on a strictly Jimmy Dore palette.
Oh.
I love Jimmy Dore.
Nice.
But what's the story behind what happened between them? Because I've heard that there was a fallout between them, but he's still on their show. I just saw him on there last week. So, does anyone know what the issue was there?
With Jimmy Dore?
Yeah, with Jimmy Dore and the Young Turks. I heard he left the show, but he's been on there a few times since he supposedly left.
I watched a show recently where Jimmy said they're trying to give Jimmy another show as well. So they're not cutting ties for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, he's definitely on a different message. I mean, having Randy Credico, who I also love, on, and he's being very vocal about things, but I don't know. I mean, there's always some kind of drama in this movement, it seems like. But I did catch that hasn't he been sitting in for Jesse Ventura on RT?
I've heard that, but I haven't seen it, but I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he did, but I didn't watch it either.
Okay, he dared to go into Russian sponsored television with Ed Schultz and Larry King and all those good American journalists that can speak their mind. But yeah, so he went over to RT, I guess, at least to stand in for Jesse. But so what do you guys think, like, if Twitter's going to continue down the road of Facebook kind of censoring, and I mean, what's next? What do you guys think is going to happen with this? Just keep moving to other platforms? I mean,
well, as far as what Twitter is going to do, I think Twitter is going to use the Russia fear-mongering to validate and excuse more censorship. It gives them justification to protect us from views. Mm-hmm. So I really worry about where that has us headed. I mean, even if you look at the last election, so these Russian memes allegedly impacted all of our lives, right? These dank memes, or whatever.
I'm a Russian bot.
Right. Mm-hmm. So they would have us believe that we are more influenced by that than Twitter themselves suppressing the DNC leaks hashtag, which I don't know, was something like 60% of the DNC hashtags were admittedly suppressed, and no one's upset about that. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is in the height of the election. You've got mainstream media, Facebook, Twitter, all trying to downplay the actual stories revealed by the DNC leaks, WikiLeaks, SD emails. Right. And basically, the overriding messages they wanted us to take away from that as the general population is, it's kind of a nothing burger. It's some sort of sordid stuff in politics that always happens. And that's how they covered it on MSNBC. Mm-hmm. And so when you got Twitter suppressing half the hashtags that every progressive was using, I mean, that's already getting to be a pretty big source of propaganda on the U.S. population. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I find that far scarier than a Trump presidency. I'm sorry, but this is like our democracy. If we have our media as total propaganda and our elections aren't free and fair, that to me is scarier than one term of Trump.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
Yeah. So, speaking of the Russian bots, Brian, do you remember what page that was on of that, the indictment? It was like page 96 or something?
The end of the damn thing. Like page, like,
somebody...
something out of like 120. It was like buried at the very back of it.
Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me, but the gist of it was somebody pointed out that if you look down on this 95th page, that there's actually something there that says that this what is it, Internet Research Agency, that they were paid by Americans.
Yeah.
It actually says that in the
all the money came from American sources.
So, I mean, the fact that we indicted internet bots just blows my mind. Like, where does that stop? Like, advertising is global. Like, how is this? I don't know.
Right, but then why is MSNBC also not reporting that piece of data that you just shared?
Right.
Like, why are they not telling you? I mean, argue the merits of what it means, but it's a fact we should know. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Why aren't we told that? And that's what makes us all question. That's what gives legs to all these conspiracy theories. Right. Is that you have reasons not to trust a lot of mainstream media.
Exactly. And that's dangerous. Brian and I have talked about this quite a bit on our weekend thing. That, when you've got a situation where we don't have actual real journalism. And that gives rise to, some truth-telling in independent media, but it also gives rise to conspiracy theories that really don't have it. I'm sorry, but the shooting stuff, that those are actors and all of that. But it's this slippery slope of people don't trust the media, so then they don't trust anything, and they just kind of run, way, I don't know, way in the other direction. So it's really dangerous. And I think we've got a couple of really great people. Max Blumenthal, I love him. I always go to him for stuff, and especially foreign policy stuff and what's been going on in Syria. He and Lee Camp had a good talk about that. It was very informative. Stuff I'd never heard before, like the funding, like to these groups, and I wrote it all down here. But and then I'm sorry, but RT, I love Ed Schultz, but of course I'm watching the Putin channel, I guess. But it's just crazy the silencing of dissent on the left, and how many people still don't realize that. I don't know. Do you? I mean, you're out, John. You're out in the, public talking to voters. What's your feel on? Do you feel like more people are waking up like we are, or are we in our own little bubble here of thinking everybody's awake?
No, I think a lot of people are waking up to the reality of the situation that we're in. I mean, I have to say that I have run across the occasional Democratic voter who is a blue no matter who type person, and it's like literally talking to a brick wall. I'm trying to explain to these people, to give y'all backstory on my whole race. I got death threats, so I was threatened. Got death threats. My dog was threatened. My job was threatened. My income. And at first, I was like, oh, these Republicans are crazy, because I was still in the sleep pod myself, plugged into the Democratic machine myself. And then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, this is not from Republicans, this is from Democrats. And I started to put the pieces together and started to put out who knows who's connected to who. And I started to realize, like, this is a whole, this is their whole MO that they do, that they find their person and they try to push as many people out as possible. And so I think the average voter is receptive to that. I think the average voter is beginning to understand, at least in my district, that we're heavily Republican. So a lot of them don't like the Democrats anyway. And so a lot of them are willing to listen to someone who used to be a Democrat that is saying, hey, look, that party's not for me anymore. I left. Here's why. They don't realize quite yet, I think, that I'm probably further left than their worst ideas of what a Democrat is yet. And that's great, because that works out to my advantage. At least I'm in the door with them. I'm able to speak with them and say, look, this is what I've seen, what I've noticed. This is what, and then here's what I want to do. Decide on the merits. Don't decide on, the person, so to speak. And that's what the Democrats in my district have struggled with in this election. They think they're going to win the election by trashing Devin Nunes up and down the 22nd. Well, people don't care about that. The people in my district care about the clean drinking water. They care about our air quality, which is terrible. We have the worst air quality in California by far, and probably one of the worst in the country. So people are not worried about Devin Nunes and a Russian memo and whether or not he knew this or knew that, or what they don't care about that. And it's going to be so far removed from them. And I tried to explain this the other day to one of the other candidates in the race. I said, you think that Devin Nunes has put his full weight in this district? He's got $4 million. All I've seen from him are signs so far. So he's making sure that he's got his signs out, but he hasn't put his full weight into this race yet. And if you want to beat him, you've got to beat him on principles. And so I think the average voter, to answer your original question, I think the average voter understands that. I think they understand that if you're going to talk to me about what's important to me, I'm willing to listen to you. Am I going to agree with you about everything? Probably not. But if we can talk about it, at least, I can promise you I'm going to leave him out of it. And most people have been responsive to that messaging. I mean, we do come across, again, the occasional, I don't care, you're not a Democrat, I don't want to talk to you, we need a Democrat to win. And it's like, no, we really don't. We really need someone else to win. We need someone that has a clear vision, that understands the stakes and knows how to play the game. And that can get stuff done in Washington. We don't need another Democrat, because the Democrats they're like the dog that's chasing the truck. If they finally manage to unseat Nunes, they don't even know what they're going to do. And I don't think that they have even thought that far ahead. So it doesn't really, I guess my point is this: we have to begin to focus on the issues, and the Democratic Party didn't learn that from 2016. You can't focus on how bad the other person is for the rest of your life. It's not, or the rest of the campaign. It's not going to help. It's not going to win an election. So,
yeah.
if you want Republican votes in a Republican district, you need to appeal to the people that don't like the healthcare system.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of them are living under they're paying the consequences for it. They can feel what's happening with it. And they don't care about red or blue if you get their healthcare fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, it's funny you mention that, Peter, because the people in my district, you know, if you ask any of the other candidates what's the biggest mistake that Devin Nunes has made in his political career the last year or so, instantly the answer will always be Russia from all of them. It'll say, oh, Russia this, Russia that. And I'm like, no, you want to know the biggest mistake he made? Devin Nunes and I are from the same town. We're from I'm the same hometown as him. Our hospital in my hometown closed last year, 1,000 jobs lost. Almost 50,000 people that hospital was responsible for caring for. Don't sit here and fucking tell me that Devin Nunes' worst mistake that he made was that he had a memo with Russia. It was letting that hospital close. How do I know that? Because guess what? If I live in Tulare now, I don't get to go to the hospital in Tulare. I have to come to Visalia. That's a 20-minute ambulance ride, or 15 if the traffic's okay. So that's 20 minutes that I'm not seeing a doctor. That's 20 minutes that you're not going to see a doctor, that you could die in. Don't sit here and tell me that Russia's the biggest thing. That's added time. That's lost job. That's lost wages. The economy around the hospital has basically just devolved. It's not even there anymore. All the businesses that were in that area are all closed because there's no point in them being open there anymore because the hospital's closed. And so it's funny because I told one of the other candidates, they said, well, Devin Nunes couldn't fix that. Bullshit, he couldn't have the money. The reason they closed was money, so they say. Guess what committee Devin Nunes sits on in addition to intelligence? Ways and Means. So what does Ways and Means do? They handle money. So don't sit here and tell me that he couldn't have found time to appropriate $1 million or whatever it was that hospital needed to stay open, that he couldn't have slipped that in there and made sure that would have been, a calling card for him to use later. No, he didn't care enough to do that, and that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Damn straight.
Yeah.
So.
Well, like Nina Turner said quite a long time ago, I don't know, maybe a year, sometime last year, she was on a show and she said, look, people don't care about Russia. They care about making it paycheck to paycheck. I mean,
Yes.
I guess some do,
Yeah.
the liberal elite class maybe. That's all they can talk about. But speaking of the memo,
or Deborah Messing.
Somebody has a Twitter handle, Deborah Messing with you. I think you know that.
That was great yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. But about the memo, I was actually at the Unrig the System summit in New Orleans when that came out. And I was just stunned that nobody was talking about this. So I kept checking my phone every time I could to see, what the real story on that was. But has anybody watched Bill Binney on Jimmy Dore had him on, and he talked about the memo and the truth about what actually happened with that, about the FISA court and them going and get. You know the story or.
So what I thought was interesting, obviously I had to read the memo because I need to know what's being said or what Devin was alleging. And I read the Democratic memo, so I read the Schiff memo too. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a third one that I read too from the Senate as well, that they released as well. But what I thought was interesting is the Democrats didn't say, hey, Devin Nunes is absolutely lying, he's full of shit, here's why. See the documents attached. They basically said the same thing that he said. So I'm like, wait a minute. Right. So you guys are all about this memo, but then when we look at the Democrats memo, they redacted a little bit more. They took out a couple more things, but they're basically the stories are exactly the same. Yeah. So how can you say that the memo is the most important thing? Well, if the memo is the most important thing, by the Democrats' own admission, everything in the memo is valid. So what we should be looking at is the FISA courts and what they were doing, right? That's what should be what we're looking at. But no one's putting the logic together. It's the logic behind it, and that's what I think's missing in this whole election cycle from the Democrats. It's the logic. Where's your logic at? Where's the follow through with the you can't even get. Most people can't even explain what the memo is about. I don't think they know. They just know Russia is bad. And to me, it's interesting.
Well, yeah, Bill Binney talked about that, just the FISA court and what actually happened, the way they they based getting the wiretapping, they presented that to the FISA court based on an article that was written by the same guy, the Steele dossier. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, wait a minute. If this were Republicans, if this was something Trump had done, oh my God. But yet you don't hear anything about this. And I don't know. It's just all logic is out the window. I guess they're just so beside themselves with Trump's win that they can't think straight. And these are the same people, and I was one of them. They said, "Oh my God, Fox News is just crazy, and people, you can't talk to people. It's like talking to a brick wall." And now it's the same thing, but on the other side. But I also I'm going to plug our friend Joanne Leon's podcast. She really should have a lot more listeners because they do an awesome job. She used to write for Shadowproof, but check out Around the Empire, and they do a fantastic job like breaking this down and explaining it. She talked about the Mueller indictment and about the memo and just made it make sense. So I highly recommend that. She's on Twitter
I found it, I think. Yeah. I'll subscribe so I can take
I go to her or Max Blumenthal or anybody, Real News Network or Around the Empire to sort of make sense of it, because you're certainly not going to get it on cable news. So Pat, right? We're on Peter and Pat.
Peter.
Yeah, you have so many names. So are you a writer otherwise, or are you just a general smartass? So you come up with good.
Hey, tell us how you do it, Kelly.
I'm 90% a nice guy, 10% asshole, and that works out well for politics. No, I'm actually a grad student. I mean, when the primaries were happening, I was in grad school. I mean, I took to Twitter to stop annoying all my friends and family on Facebook and jump into it. To try to, I naively thought I could get my voice out more than I could when I started, but I have a bigger platform now, so I can get things across. But what the heck was the question?
Oh, just were you a writer? Like, did you just start doing this like out of the blue? You just kept thinking of things to.
No, I just wanted to chime in on the primaries and help Bernie. That's what it came down to during the election. I'm a grad student in industrial design, nothing related to writing, nothing comedy.
Okay.
Just thought I'd put my 2 cents out there, and people follow them. So.
The hashtags are just so funny. Oh my God! This still, John, are you just now checking it out?
It's my favorite latest one.
Oh, still withering.
Yeah, because anytime you get these DNC talking points, you can just, if you just want to leave it at still withering and walk away, you just won. It's easy. But I don't like to even get into debates too much online. But if you are going to, it's an easy way to just end it.
Well, what I've noticed is with the Democrats, the blue wave, whatever, the Maddow watchers, is it's the same thing as it used to be with Republicans, I would argue with. Is, you start out and you think, okay, well, let's just stay on the issues, and never fails, it devolves into personal attacks.
Every time.
Every time. It's just unbelievable. And I saw today, or maybe it was yesterday, that we're now blaming Susan Sarandon for Syria.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So,
that makes no sense.
It just so quickly devolves into insanity. It's just
every time.
Yeah, Syria, and Susan Sarandon was the anti-war. That's her whole premise of being,
right.
And yet,
staunchly anti-war.
Democrats are completely confused about: do we want to bomb Syria? Do we not want to bomb Syria? Well, Hillary wanted it at one point. Well, she wanted to bomb harder, but with nicer, kinder bombs. They don't know what to say.
Right.
Well, I will say this personally, being in a heavily Republican district, like I said, it's 70-30, by the way, just so we're clear. It's like 70-30 Republican.
Oh, I'm in the other way, 70-30 blue where I am.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, no. So last time I think we reelected Nunes by like 67-33, I think is what it was. But I will say this, talking with Republicans is a hell of a lot easier than talking with Democrats in my district. The Republicans, I think what we tend to forget, or I should say what the Democrats tend to forget, is that behind that label of deplorable, there's actually people in there. I know a lot of them want to think that those people are deplorable and they can't talk to them and they're too good and they shouldn't associate with them because they're racist or xenophobic or, on and on and on. I'm like, those are actual people. And they're actually suffering too. Are they misguided about their feelings about, racial minorities? Yeah, probably. Are they misguided about their feelings about LGBT plus people? Yeah, most definitely. But what we need to be willing to do is have a conversation, because they're never going to come to the understanding that they're misguided or that they're wrong if we're not going to sit down and talk with them and show them how. And so I have a hell of a lot more of an easier time talking with Republicans. I had one, I did a ride-along with the sheriff. I do ride-alongs with my local law enforcement, which I'm the only candidate, by the way, out of the 7 of us running that has bothered to go to any of them. And so I sat down with one of the sheriffs the other day, and he said, oh, don't tell me you're some commie, lefty, liberal, yada, yada, yada. And I said, yeah, pretty much. And he said, yeah, I'll take it. I'll wear that label. But as we talked, he began to realize, wait a minute, we've got a lot in common. Wait, you don't want to take my guns away? Wait, you think that we should have this? Wait, you don't think that this? And I'm like, we have a lot in common, but we've become so divided. And if we look at the media, it's like you said, Kelly, the media, they're incentivized to keep us divided. They make money off of the fact that we're divided. And that's what it comes down to. So to speak to your original point, I have a hell of a lot of an easier time talking with Republicans. There are a lot more of them too.
Right.
But it turns out Republicans vote. The Democratic Party seem to miss this. They think we'll hate the other side and we'll just win an election.
Yeah, and I don't think they quite realize by this non-stop hyped up stuff they're doing on a daily basis, that's just keeping it more likely to have higher turnout from the other side, because it's just, they're bringing attention to it nonstop. Yeah, it's crazy.
And the thing is our establishment maintains it by keeping us divided. That's why that strategy has been used for such a long period of time, because it works. As long as they can keep us divided, they'll maintain their power structure. And that's why we've got to whatever means we can to come together.
But it's just so easy for the low info voter, and I don't mean that as an insult. There are just people that aren't really into it. They're busy. It's just so easy to say, well, I'm with that team, or I'm okay. So this side is for gay rights and all. Okay, well, I'm over there,
right. And the more you're discussed with politics, the more you want to just tune it out and say, I'm a blue person.
Right.
Or a red person. I understand people that don't put the energy in to follow it as close as we all do. I wish I could tap out.
Yeah.
But, some of us can't. But at least we're countering the constant messages from the main.
Exactly. Yeah, please don't stop, because your tweets are so funny. So they keep us going, I think. I know just today I noticed my niece, who's in high school, posted something about Trump and Syria, and it was like a map, and and I'm not picking on her, she's like 17, but I pointed out to her, like, look a little bit more closely at this, because the map was like, it was like a message, and like it was red and blue, and it was like the blue people, we're not for this war. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So I went and found some articles like how the Democrats in the Senate are, look, both sides are pro-war. So, but as long as you can keep people just not looking further, then yeah, you've got them.
Right. If you can, from the Democratic Party's perspective, if you can convince them that Medicare for all is not doable, that's a win for Democrats, and that's what the party has become now. So if you point out that had we not given the Pentagon all that extra money beyond what they even asked for, you could pay for public college. Like that's a message they don't want out there, because then you start going, well, we can do some of this stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just logic. I mean, so, I'm always interested about voter turnout as we talk to candidates. Because, I think the people that are going to respond the most to, I'll say, CFAR candidates, the real candidates that are talking to the issues and over, not ignoring party lines and all that, I think those candidates can really appeal to those people that typically don't vote because they feel like, oh, what's the point, or they both sides suck. And so I'm always interested when I talk to a candidate that has signed our contract is, what's the voter turnout like where you are? Do you know that where the voter percentage turnout is where you are?
I don't know the percentage wise. I can tell you that I can tell you our population is for that area for our district is around 770,000. It's around that much. The last election, I believe the total votes were about 250,000, at least for the House section. So that could be a little bit off. Some people might have voted for president, not voted for House, but it was about 250. So we're looking at 30%, 33%.
Wow. So
I will tell you this. The voter turnout is going to be a lot higher this year because, again, Devin Nunes is kind of getting his feet held to the fire, so to speak. But I agree with what was said a few minutes ago. I think Peter said it, that or maybe it was you, Kelly, that said that's only going to drive the other side. So all those ads, all the ads that they keep running and all the billboards, we had one of the leading Democrat in the race put Devin Nunes on a child's leash, tied to Trump on a child's leash, tied to President Putin on a child's leash. And this was their brilliant strategy for winning the election. And, this is really going to knock him out. And I go, and I told him flat out, I know him well enough to talk to him and we get along okay. But I told him, I said, that was the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. I lived in Texas for 5 years. And say what you want about Texas, but if you did that to someone in Texas, you would be ran out of town. They would not only not vote for you, they would make sure that they called you out about it. And you would never, you'd be lucky if you cracked over, over half of what the last person that ran for your position got. And that's just how they play there. They don't do that sort of thing. And so I think this year the turnout is going to be higher because I think a lot more Republicans are not appreciating what's happening. I think a lot more Republicans are incentivized to come out because Devin Nunes is, he's been in Congress for 14 years now, or 15, 16 years. So he's kind of like the hometown boy that's been in Congress. And so I don't think he's going to go down that easy without a fight. So it will be interesting to see what the turnout looks like. But again, I've tried to explain to the Democrats, even if you had every single Democrat who voted last time vote for this guy again, you had every single independent vote for this guy again, or vote for this guy, and you had every Green Party, every third party vote for your guy, you would still need about 50,000 Republicans. And we explained this to them, and they're like, no, we can register more people. And I'm like, unless you grow 50,000 people in a tank and make them age 18 and register them all to vote and then drive them to the polls and make sure that they check the box that says Democrat on it and you get a receipt from them and you visually make sure that they hit that confirm button, then you probably are still going to get your ass handed to you. And that's just how our district is built. That's how the math isn't there. And so it will be interesting to see. If I am not the second person in the top two runoff, it will be interesting to see what the turnout looks like because I'm not going to be campaigning for the Democrat myself. I personally will not campaign for him. My staff will not work for him. And they tried to kind of trap us into it. The last town hall that we were at, they kind of tried to get us to say that we would support him. And I did not answer the question. So and they know I didn't answer the question because I let everyone else answer. And then I kind of looked like, okay, can we move on now? And they were like, okay, so next question. Because I won't support him. And I think what you said earlier, Kelly, is the truth. It scares me a lot more what the Democrats are doing to progressive candidates all around the country, like SEMA, here in California, we have a few progressive candidates who are being kind of pushed to the side that are running against Feinstein for Senate. And then they're pushing their, this faux liberal, faux progressive Kevin DeLeon, who is not really that progressive in actuality. And so Yeah, well, I mean, I just can't support that. I can't get behind the Democratic Party in its current incarnation. And I hope Peter's right. Maybe it is salvageable. I don't know.
I don't know that it is. I'm not saying it is. I believe in an inside out. I mean, I think you need people pressuring the party. They need to know that independents can win. And if they don't know that, they're just entitled to go even more to the right.
Well, I think the numbers, that just shows you. I mean, and even, you said Republican. So we use these labels. Okay, they're just voters that voted Republican. We're at like half the country's independent. Maybe those people that came out and voted Republican, it was just their lesser of two evils choice at that point. And, they're malleable as independent thinkers, they're just people. So maybe those, 400,000 people that didn't vote would be inspired by what you have to say. That's what, Marcia Squire was the first one that said this to me. She's great.
Marsha.
Yeah, isn't it at Triple Marsha? I think it's her Twitter handle.
Probably.
I think, yeah. So she is she's in a district where my grandparents lived for 31 years, and so I'm familiar with it. And that is Macomb County had voted for Obama twice, and they went for Trump this last time. So, these are people that, they're voting on what, economics mainly, I think. But yeah, they could be definitely, they're probably more considered independents, really. But she made this very simple statement, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. She's like, if just all the people that don't vote voted for me, I'd win, like easy. But when you really look at those numbers, I think that's the key right there. Is if people think you're speaking to them about their issues and you sound legitimate, I think people don't buy it anymore with the faux aggressive. They can tell when someone's authentic or not. That's why Bernie got so much support, right?
It's enthusiasm. If you don't have enthusiasm, you don't win the election.
Right.
And if you're a fake candidate, even though you're saying the right things, if you're a fake candidate, there won't be enthusiasm.
Mm-mm.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Peter, because when we were at our last town hall, my staff, obviously was there with me. And of course, I take notes from them. So I said, what did I do well and what did I not do well, so that we know, so I can work on the things I didn't do well. And one of the notes that they told me was, the leading Democrat in our race, first of all, this motherfucker got there 20 minutes late to this town hall, which is, that just tells you right there, that communicates that you don't care about anyone else's time. Then he leaves in the middle of the town hall, right? He makes a big show of them coming up and being like, oh, we need you to go, we gotta go. And he's like, all right, you guys, I'm really sorry to do this. And then, of course, they move around the whole town hall for him, right? But one of the things that my staff said was he wasn't even there for an hour, and you could tell he didn't want to be there. You could tell he didn't want to be there to begin with. There was no enthusiasm. There was no excitement to be interacting with his constituents, whereas someone like me, and there was another person who also went in there, we went in there coming to kill. We were in there to make sure that everyone knew what we were about, to make sure, because we've been denied so much coverage I've not been interviewed by anybody, so I've been denied coverage all over, and so we wanted to make sure that I communicated to all of you, you better look at all your options. And so I think you're right. I think if there's not enthusiasm there, it doesn't matter what your candidate is saying that they're for or against. And that's also part of the reason why they tried to kind of trap me into working for him. They tried to say, if we can get him on record saying that he'll come work for Andrew after he loses, then we can use his enthusiasm. Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
they can make a poster that says John backs this guy. That's what they'll do.
Right.
Oh yeah. Put it out in all the black neighborhoods and all the gay neighborhoods I told you about.
Exactly.
It just blows my mind that they're still running on the same thing they did in the primary. They're counting on, that's okay when they fail because if we give them media blackout or whatever, they'll just come along and support. They like we were going to come along and support Hillary. No, didn't happen. They're just playing the same tune all over again, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny too that you say that, because they're also doing the same thing. I have an local assemblyman. Him and I have met several times. He's actually a really wonderful person. He's a Republican. And that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care. Like you were saying, I don't care what your party affiliation is. I happened to meet with him because I am the founder of a nonprofit, and so I was trying to secure his support for their nonprofit. And of course, he knew I was running for election. He knew that, I'm not a Republican. But then after recently meeting him, I had a campaign manager for the Democrat that's running against him send me a message basically asking me to endorse her candidate. And I said, I'm not endorsing him. He's been part of the whole operation that's kind of been sending me threats and everything. And so I'm not endorsing him. And I have the proof. I have the emails. And so the first thing she says is, well, you know that Devin Mathis is a woman beater, right? Or he's a womanizer and he did that. And I'm like, do you honestly think that I care what you are telling me that Devin Mathis did when I have emails from your candidate showing that he was a part of this whole little collaboration, but you think that that's gonna kind of make me go, oh, okay, well, if he's a woman beater, well, then I guess I have to endorse your guy. What kind of sense does that make? And it goes back to the whole, well, Trump said he likes to grab him by the pussy, so we can't vote for him. You can't do that. People don't like that. People don't like being told what they can and cannot do.
Right.
They generally tend to do the opposite of what they're told they can't do. So.
But it was such a great victory that Democrats won against the child molester guy. Where was that? Alabama?
Doug Jones, Alabama.
Yeah.
Squeaked by.
Yeah, but that victory.
Well, to the consultants, that gave them, I mean, do you know how many articles that were written after that saying,
tons,
saying Democrats should run a generic candidate, so don't
Yes.
take too radical a position. Like, we just beat a pedophile, so let's just spread that around the whole world. The whole U.S. should run on this generic platform.
Right. Like, is it Connor Lamb in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, him too. Yeah, unbelievable.
And now you look at their votes, and of course they're voting Republican. I mean...
Well, you know what's funny about Connor Lamb is the Democrat in our race, the leading Democrat, they made sure that he met Connor Lamb right before Connor Lamb secured his victory. And so, of course, Andrew Jantz is sending out tweets, retweeting everything Connor Lamb is posting. And then as soon as he wins, what comes out the next day? Just so you guys know, California 22nd is less red than Pennsylvania, whatever it was, 12th or whatever he's in. So we got a chance here, just so you know, guys. Like, no.
Totally unrelated. I mean, yeah.
No, completely different factors, but that's the thing. It goes back to the logic. It's like there's logic involved here. There's so many different factors that are at play. Connor Lamb was running for an open seat. He wasn't running against an incumbent. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So.
Right.
Well, I say we just keep being loud and tweeting good sarcastic things and being loud on other platforms and continuing to speak about this. I think it is catching on some. We had actually Momita Ahmed on last week or week before. Do you guys remember all the news coverage everywhere about the Hillary supporter guy that hit her with a cane? Do you remember that?
Was it last week?
This is total I'm being absolutely sarcastic.
Oh.
Sorry. I'm not
There was a Hillary supporter in Florida who had to resign.
Oh.
In Florida it was.
Wasn't that the guy that...
And there were allegations, I think, that he was... I don't know.
Well, what about that actor that punched a
that
in the elevator?
right.
Yes.
Was it Treme or something?
That on the news? No, that was gone in a hurry.
Yeah. I think that was the guy from what was it called? Treme or something? HBO special that took place in New Orleans.
Wendell Pierce?
Oh, that's right. Yep, I think
That's right.
I think
That's right. It was, I think you're right. I think it was Wendell Pierce.
Yeah, but this other one, I know that TYT did cover this at the time. This old guy, and I'll say his name. I don't care. It's Nicholas Sillage. Whacked her with a cane. She's a Bernie delegate, and it's.
I do remember the story now.
It's
it was
just
in New York.
Yep.
Yeah, it was New York. Yeah.
And she walked by, and I guess he just stuck the cane out, whatever. He didn't really beat her over the head with it, but she whips around and comes back, and she comes back. She's like, "Don't you ever fucking touch me!" And she turns around, and you can hear on the camera, you can hear it whack. And so he hit her, and you can't really see where, but it was all on camera. Now you tell me if that's not the perfect evidence of our media being total propaganda. Because what did we hear about chairs being thrown for a week when it never happened? But that was, imagine if that had been an old, white man supporting Bernie hit a woman of color. What would that would have, oh my God, it's just,
crap.
Yeah.
Well, every time something happens with a Bernie supporter, MSNBC goes on full breaking news alert trying to hype up a story until Bernie apologizes.
Every time. Every time.
They'll have a Republican senator on, even. And it'll be totally unrelated. They'll be saying, do you think Bernie should apologize for the guy in Florida spilled his Coke on a...
Oh, wait. Was that has to have been your hashtag, the Parkagate? Did you come up with...
I don't know if I made it up, but I use it a lot.
Yeah.
Because they try to make it a story that Bernie has a nice jacket. And
he lives in Vermont. It's cold.
And was it was bought for him by his son or something?
His son works for whatever the jacket company is.
Burlington?
Patagonia? Burlington Coat Factory. Talk about high fashion.
But they actually ran this story twice. They ran it once like a year before.
Yeah.
And somebody saw him again in a jacket and said, let's just hit him again with a fancy jacket.
just in case we missed it before, hit him again.
Yeah, but the thing is, these stories always start with garbage articles that get retweeted by like Joanna Reid or somebody.
I can't stand Joanne Reid, dude.
Oh, she's the worst.
She is the worst.
Tie with Maddow, but Maddow, at least on Twitter, doesn't Joanne Reid it.
I used to love Rachel Maddow. I used to be such a Rachel Maddow fan.
I'm so embarrassed.
When she was on Air America, she was really good. She is not the same person.
And that right there is evidence of how easy it is to sell out in this system.
Yeah.
Because,
completely corrupted by it. Yep.
Now, the angriest moment in the primaries for me was when Maddow tried to create the story that Bernie was attacking Planned Parenthood. That was a totally fabricated story on Rachel Maddow.
Yep.
Where he said he was answering a question about why he didn't get the support of leadership in Planned Parenthood. And he said, it was establishment stuff, basically. Leaders, she's a Democrat. They've been tight with her. That was a breaking moment where Maddow literally went into the hallway. You've never seen Maddow ever in like a secret, like Fox News-y kind of moment where they like get a camera and Geraldo Rivera in the hallway interviewing him about what Bernie just said. I mean, they actually did that.
I think I missed that one. I must have turned off cable news.
Look that up.
That was my Maddow's dead to me moment.
Okay. I must have had already turned off cable news by that point. I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I always like to tell my never Hillary moment came pretty early, but it was over the whole that he was being sexist about the shouting, because he said in the debate we need to stop shouting about gun control. And there's this clip of her, and I've retweeted it a lot of times because to me, you can tell when you watch her that she knows she's just lying, and it's just a line. She's like, it's just that, what'd she say? Sometimes when a woman says something, people call it shouting, and then you hear the crowd roar, and so then it just snowballed that, yes, Bernie accused her of shouting when he was on multiple other clips you can find of him saying we need to stop shouting about gun control, and find what we can agree on. So it's just, I don't know. I think sometimes Hillary Clinton thinks she's still in the 90s and forgets that there are clips, she says things, they're still operating. Like you said, the billboard, like people see that kind of stuff now and they're like, what is this crap? This doesn't work anymore.
One of Obama's arguments when he ran against her was that she was of him on gun control. And that, it's on the internet, stupid.
Yeah.
It's on the internet, stupid.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you've got to see the billboard. It's like so terrible, and it's just such in bad taste. And like I said, I mean, there was quite a hush or quite an uproar, I should say, in Texas. We had a mayor in San Antonio, Ivy Taylor. She was running against. She's no longer the mayor. She was an independent, and she was running against a Democratic, I think, state senator, Leticia Vanderpoot. And she ran, and one of the things that became kind of like a stink in the whole race was that Leticia Vanderpoot, I think that's her name, brought up the fact that Ivy Taylor's husband, his businesses or something, and she basically was implying that Ivy Taylor's husband was laundering money or somehow getting government contracts, or it was very, very unsubstantiated, dirty, Democratic, of course, stuff. It was very much like, and I'll tell you what, after that came out, Leticia Vanderpoot, no one wanted to vote for her, and she lost pretty badly, if I'm not mistaken. And she was favored to win that race because San Antonio is heavily Democratic city, and Ivy Taylor was already seen as basically a Republican, and so she ended up losing that race pretty badly. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that she started talking about her husband. And so, that wasn't even a billboard. That was just the way you talk to people. And so it's funny because when I tell people I lived in Texas, they're like, oh, you lived in Texas. Well, great. Texans, I'm sure they're ignorant or they're this or they're that. And I'm like, yeah, I'll tell you one thing. Texans don't play with the dirty name calling and the insinuations, and that stuff's just not going to fly. And there's a lot of places in the country that feel the same way. Nebraska, North Dakota, the Midwest states, that stuff doesn't fly. And guess what? If you want a majority, you got to win those areas. So,
and I think now it works even less because of social media, because the counter argument to their big gotcha moment is, no, you don't got me. Here's the whole video.
Right.
Here's the whole thing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you take Deborah Messing trying to attack Nina Turner just yesterday or the day before, or whenever it was.
I missed it. What happened? Tell us.
So, Nina was on some MSNBC show. I don't remember which one. And they asked her about Cohen, Trump's attorney, if it was an overreach that they were going after his records.
Right.
Basically, she said, she didn't address that part directly. She said, well, that we have reasons that we should not trust the FBI historically as black people, FBI, CIA, it's okay to question. It was a nuanced answer, but it wasn't supporting Trump and Cohen.
Right.
It was saying, look, we should all protect our liberties and,
And also look at our history, because they were watching Dr. King and Malcolm X and all of the other people, Huey Newton, all of them.
Right. But literally anybody that watched the minute-long conversation knows that it's nonsense to say she was defending Cohen. But Deborah Messing plays this, oh, how dare you defend Cohen thing online.
Right.
And so they launched this attack like that. But the point I was trying to make is, okay, now we can all fight back to that. We can all push back and say, look, this is a silly talking point. Here's the whole clip. Watch it for yourselves. It's garbage. Go away, Deborah Messing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I responded to that tweet because it was too good.
Oh yeah, John, you.
Hashtag the Will and Grace reboot is terrible.
They did a reboot?
Yeah, they did a reboot and it's terrible. So
I think Brian has not had a television for how long?
About 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah. That's how you wake up.
Probably good for your sanity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm going on almost 2 without cable, so yeah.
wow.
Yeah. But John, you have a lot of reading to do. You'll be laughing for hours reading Pat's tweets.
Sure.
They're so funny.
I'm gonna put them on my notification list, on my pinging list.
No pressure on you now. You got to come up with more. No, the owned together. That's beautiful. What else do we have? Yeah, the still withering. What else? Oh my God, they're just so funny. You had one night. I don't know. You were really on a roll. what do you have here?
Well, I can give you the platform. The platform is Medicare for a few, single prayer, fight for 12-ish by 2040-ish. There's a few more, but top ramen for college.
What? Top ramen for college, yes.
The Democratic platform.
So these just come to you when you...
I don't. Everything evolves from just reading articles.
Yeah.
I read articles and just think this is absurd, and then try to think of something absurd to match it.
Right.
I love Own Together. That is just
that's hilarious.
Yes.
I actually tweeted something about that today because something came out about Hillary's PAC. It's Onward Together.
Yeah.
And apparently they bought a list of us. They spent the DNC spent $500,000 to get a list from Hillary Clinton just recently.
Uh-huh.
Oh wow.
You know, and meanwhile, you know, the local chapters are all starving for funds. But
Yep.
You know.
What was?
But anyway, I tweeted that it's Onward Together. It's Own Together, not Onward Together, because that sounds a little bit more like hospice.
I just read your one about mimosas for Democratic Rising Stars. That is hilarious.
It is hilarious.
TM. I love the TM.
Yeah.
That's great. That is wonderful. Oh my god. I was going to say something. I just totally lost my train of thought. Well, you have to keep up these great... Do you take submissions? Do people send you like ideas for hashtags if they come up with them?
Yeah, actually somebody just... What was it? Oh, instead of Medicare for a few, somebody suggested GoFundMe for all.
Oh.
That's been added to the platform. And that wasn't me. That was someone else. But you know, sometimes something
That's good.
Yeah.
It's too perfect.
Yeah, it is. My husband had some coworkers that were all in Vienna, Austria, and one of them asked, like, what is up with, like, that's the answer to everyone's medical bills is GoFundMe now? What is going on with this? It's just crazy. It's, you know,
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd.
It is. All right. Well, it is 11 o'clock, and I could talk for hours, but I want to keep everybody, if you somewhere... you have more tweets to come up with, more hashtags. No pressure. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, I hope I'm sure everyone that sees this already knows of your Twitter feed here. It's at Silly SIL capital ER, yeah, rabbit. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. It was the what was that? They tried to start a new platform. Was it Verit or something? Do you remember that?
Oh my god!
And wasn't that Peter Dow that was
hilarious?
That's what it was.
It was too fertile of a ground for trolls. It was perfect.
But
I signed up for an account there. That's how perfect.
But wasn't Peter Dow involved in that? And then the whole thing like crashed in a day because people like attacked it or something? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so he set it up. It's called the Platform for 65 million.
Oh, yeah.
All the Hillary voters.
Mm-hmm.
But the premise was that they would verify what are true facts and put the true facts out with a code that verified that they were true facts.
Mm-hmm.
And all they did is cherry pick stuff and say, put a number underneath it.
Mm.
So, and they released these Verit cards that were like a snippet on a card with a verification code. So of course it's ripe for memeing. I mean,
hey, guess what? It's a true fact that ballots were just destroyed a full 12 months before they were legally allowed to be in the race between Tim Canova and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I think those were the kind of true facts they were aiming to expose. That's what's just so crazy about it all. It's, you know, for those of us paying attention, the hypocrisy is just at levels. I don't even understand how where I live in this 70-30 blue that people are not figuring this out. It's just it's unbelievable.
I think they are. They
are.
Some,
I don't know.
No, I think they are starting to wake up though, Kelly, because I mean, for example, when people find out that I'm running for Congress, they of course assume that I'm a Democrat, right? Because a young, black, gay person you must be running as a Democrat. And then when they find out that I'm not, I think that piques a lot of people's curiosity. It gets them questioning, well, why not? And then, as I said, I explained to them, I tell them, look, the Democrats are shady as shit, and I don't associate myself with shady people. And I think a lot more people are starting to listen to that message, and they're starting to realize, and I tell people why, and I don't like identity politics. I'm not a big fan of it at all. That being said, I have to acknowledge that it plays a part in my race as a candidate. It absolutely does. And so it's funny because I tell people, why would the second black person, gay person to run for Congress in history not be a Democrat? And they're like, well, that's a good question. And it's I think a lot more people are starting to realize the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. And like I said, they're in fact worse. At least the Republicans let us know that they're going to fuck us over. They tell us beforehand, we're going to take away your rights. We're going to take away your access to healthcare. We're going to take away your money and give it to rich people. The Democrats like to pretend that they're on our side and that they're for us, that they're not, And then when we look at their voting records, I was getting stuff from the Democrats for posting the voting records of people. Well, I'm sorry, if you don't want your voting record to be public information, here's an idea. Don't run for Congress and don't be a congressperson. Or if you don't want people to know where you're getting your donations from, then don't take them. That's just how it should work. And so I think people are getting more wise to the fact about it. I think a lot more people are waking up to the fact that the Democrats are in a sense worse and that the party needs to go, I think. So.
Well,
look at. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, just look at all the people running against Nancy Pelosi. Like you have permission now in the Democratic Party to run against your leader, so they know how unpopular they are. So, if you run on ideas, run against the bad parts of the party, people have a chance of taking over within the party. But like John says, I mean, if you're an outsider, especially in a Republican district, but you're a progressive, there's nothing wrong with that. Right. Get it.
Well, I think you're right too. I mean, say what you want. I still watch SNL. I think it's, I take the meat and leave the bones, as they say in the South. And so they did a really scathing, I thought it was pretty brilliant, but it was a Democratic ad that they did. And it was Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Dianne Feinstein. And it was basically them being like, we're back. You love us again, even though we're the same fucking people that we were before the election. And we're still the same people, and we have no new ideas, but you love us. And it's like, it's all a play on how they have ideas. All of their most brilliant ideas have come from progressives, and most of the progressives are becoming no longer Democrats. Look at Tim Canova. I'd really love to see Seema run as an independent when she runs in 2020. I would love to see her leave the party and run as an independent. Do I think that that's going to happen? Probably not, but it would be nice to see more people, I think, standing up and taking and saying, look, you know what? I don't want to be a part of this party anymore. Because the Democrats, as soon as we lose, if we lose, they're going to be on our doorsteps asking us to come and help them. We need your energy. We need this from you. We need that from you. I think you're right. I think we have to kind of hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable and say, I think we need to say no. We need to say no. I'm not going to go campaign for your candidate. You can kiss my ass, and next time make a better choice.
Right, because as long as they know that no matter what, all the, hype and all the talk, as long as we can take all that energy and put it in with us, then they have no reason to actually change it. And it's corporations over people, as it always is. But about SNL, I have not been able to stomach it. The last funny thing I saw on there was right after the election, and it was Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. Do you remember that one? Where the women were sitting there just crying. They couldn't believe that Hillary lost, and they were just kind of scoffing and laughing about it, but I haven't been able to watch it ever since, what's her name that did the Hillary impersonations where she played piano and cried. I was just like, oh God, I can't take it. So all of our good comedians.
Don't get me wrong, I'm by no means endorsing them. They still do some really messy stuff, of course, but I think that ad was actually a brilliant stroke by Lorne Michaels. I think that was a good call because, and it didn't get nearly the play that it would if it would have been them making fun of the Republican Party, of course. It didn't get nearly that much attention, but I always point to that ad because it was, there's truth in art, and that was a big bit of truth for the Democratic Party, was them, the same people that have been in Congress for 40 years, all standing around and talking about how they have new ideas and, we've got such great energy, we're back, so to speak. And it's like, no, you're really not. And it's even worse because we have these older people that should have stepped. For example, we've got Maxine Waters down south running. Why is Maxine Waters still running for Congress? She's been there for 40 years. You've had your time, Aunt Maxine. Move aside. I'm supporting people running against her. Miguel Zuniga. He's a wonderful person. If you don't know who that is, you should check him out too.
Who is that?
Miguel Zuniga.
I've heard of him.
He's a great candidate. I love Miguel. And he's actually in Compton. He actually lives in Compton. Maxine Waters doesn't live in Compton. That's where her district is. He lives in Compton. Maxine Waters lives in Beverly Hills or Malibu or something.
Right.
He doesn't live in Compton. A lot of these Democratic people that represent these districts don't even live in the districts that they're representing.
Right.
Danielle St. John's another one running down south for 49, California 49. She's the only candidate, I think, in her race that lives in California's 49. She's the only one. All the rest of them live in San Diego or the other surrounding areas, and even Darrell Issa doesn't live there. He doesn't live there either. They all run for districts where they can get their little, their power, their time in office. And they really don't care. And for us to pretend like it's the Republicans too, I mean, it's not the Democrats as well, but they're not doing it too. They are. It's both sides,
I wanted to say one other thing about comedians, though. And, I mean, how much have we been let down, though, by, Stephen Colbert and...
Colbert, that's the most disappointing.
I know, isn't it?
Very much so.
I know.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I know. My daughter, she's 20. She left America to go to college because she couldn't take it anymore. She's studying journalism in Scotland. But anyway, she said... I can't believe it. Of all the people, Stephen Colbert, because she grew up like watching the Colbert Report with us, and she was like, he was my spirit animal. She's just like, oh my God, I can't handle it. But yeah, between him and oh God, Bill Maher, I'm just embarrassed to say that I ever.
I can't even watch Bill anymore. I can't watch him at all. I can't.
No. Me either. And you know what?
He's such a douche about it too. No offense, Peter. Play on Peter. He's such a douche about it. Like he's such a douche about his liberal elitism that it's like the worst. It's like the worst kind of person to watch him.
Oh,
it's all summed up when he gets mad at his audience because he tells an unfunny joke. And then he turns to them like, "You guys are not cool enough for my joke." Like,
Well, I'll never forget when Michael Moore was on the show with Bill Maher, and he told all four of them that were sitting on the stage, be careful, Trump could actually win, and they laughed at him. They laughed at him, and Bill Maher told him, oh, you're full of shit, there's no way he's gonna fucking win. Well, Michael Moore had the last laugh, and the country's burning because of it. But Michael Moore told them, be careful. This guy could actually win. I don't want us to get complacent. I don't want us to all say, oh, well, she's got it in the bag. And that's what every one of them did. Every single one of them did.
Yep.
Because they live in a bubble. But the last time I watched his show, and I'm embarrassed to say I've paid to see him in person. But anyway, different lifetime ago. Do what?
He charged you to what?
Well, at that point, it was February during the primary. So February 2016, I had already bought the tickets, and I watched the last show of his. The last one I saw was before the live show, and I knew, like, I almost just didn't go because I knew at that point, I was like, oh my God, why did I buy these tickets? Like, because he had made it very clear. The last show I watched was with Thomas Frank on, and he was there to talk about the book Listen Liberal. And
Right.
Bill Maher and meathead Rob Reiner just sat there not listening liberal at all and totally cutting him off, ignoring what he was saying, laughing at him. And I just sat there like, what? This guy knows what he's saying, you know, and they just ignored it. So that was the last time I watched it.
Well, how about when he had Milo Yiannopoulos on or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. It's okay for grown men to have sex with children. It changed my life.
Oh my God. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming on. And I just, if anybody's watching that doesn't follow Peter Douche here, please do. And if you live in, wait a minute, what district is it? California?
22nd. California
22nd. John is a CFAR candidate, and that's an organization I'm kind of plugging but we're doing it because we believe in it. CFAR is a contract that is, you know, populist items everybody can get behind, and it's, you know, for the people, not party. So we'll continue to do these. We've had a lot of fun just having conversations with people that are still fighting. So power to the people. Keep fighting and stuff.
Thanks for being on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.